Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we're diving deep into a situation that's becoming increasingly tense, unpredictable, and filled with political pressure from every direction. Lukashenko's regime, once seen as one of the most tightly controlled systems in Europe, is now showing cracks that are difficult to ignore. What was once considered stable is now shaking under the weight of economic troubles, growing public dissatisfaction, international isolation, and silent unrest within the security forces. This is a story of a ruler who held power for decades, but is now facing challenges that are no longer easy to control. In this video, we'll break down the rising pressure, the reasons behind it, and what might come next for Belarus as the future becomes more uncertain. For years, Lukashenko controlled Belarus with a firm and unchallenged grip. His ability to manage the political landscape gave him the image of a leader who could not be moved. Many believed that no matter what happened around him, he would stay in power, but today the environment is shifting. More people are speaking up, economic problems are becoming harder to hide, and tensions within his own government and military are quietly increasing. These changes are small on the surface, but together they are creating a fragile situation where even a minor push could bring dramatic consequences. One of the biggest concerns is the economy. Belarus is struggling with inflation, rising prices, and a shrinking job market. Ordinary families are feeling the pressure every day. Salaries are not keeping up with costs, businesses are closing, and young people are leaving the country for better opportunities. This creates a growing feeling of frustration that chips away at the regime's support. A leader loses influence when he can no longer offer stability, and for many Belarusians, stability is no longer something they can count on. Another major pressure point comes from Belarus's relationship with Russia. While Lukashenko has depended heavily on Russia for economic and political support, this reliance has put him in a difficult position. Moscow's influence has grown so much that many people inside Belarus believe the country is losing its independence. The more Russia steps in, the more Belarusians wonder whether their leader is truly in control or simply following orders from the Kremlin. This creates tension not only among citizens, but also among officials who are uncomfortable with this level of dependency. Inside the government, loyalty is no longer as certain as it once was. Officials who used to follow Lukashenko without question are now quietly expressing doubts. Some disagree with his decisions, while others believe staying loyal may be risky if the regime weakens. This kind of quiet division is dangerous for any ruler. It can spread silently, and by the time it becomes visible, it is often too late to stop. Fear of losing loyalty inside the system is one of the most serious threats Lukashenko faces right now. Then there is the military and security forces. For decades they have been considered his strongest shield, the group he could rely on during every crisis. But even here, pressure is building. Officers are tired of political involvement, soldiers feel the economic strain like everyone else, and some within the ranks question whether supporting the regime is still worth it. These small signs may seem unimportant, but when the people with weapons and authority start feeling unsure, the entire system becomes unstable. International isolation is making the situation even worse. Sanctions, travel restrictions, and broken diplomatic ties have limited Belarus's options. The country is more cut off than ever, and this affects the economy, foreign investment, and public confidence. Countries in Europe have largely turned against Lukashenko, and even partners who were once neutral are becoming more distant. Without international support, a regime begins to collapse inward, forced to rely only on its shrinking internal strength. Across the country, people are slowly growing bolder. Public dissatisfaction is spreading in small but consistent ways. People are talking more openly, sharing their concerns, and expressing frustration on social media. Even though the government tries to control information, it cannot stop every message, every conversation, or every whisper. These quiet expressions build a culture of resistance, and once that culture becomes strong enough, it can lead to larger movements that the regime may not be able to stop. What makes this moment particularly dangerous for Lukashenko is that all these problems are happening at the same time. Political pressure, economic trouble, military unease, and international isolation are combining into a larger crisis. A regime can survive one or two of these issues, but not all of them at once. When too many foundations weaken, the system becomes unstable, and any new event can push it over the edge. This is why analysts believe the regime is on thin ice. The cracks are visible, and they are widening. Despite all this, Lukashenko continues to present himself as confident and in control. He speaks as if nothing is wrong, and as if the threats to his rule are exaggerated. But behind the speeches and controlled media, the realities cannot be hidden. People can feel the economic hardship. Officials can see the rising tension. The world can observe the declining stability. Confidence in the leader is no longer as strong as it used to be, and once a leader begins to lose confidence, fear replaces stability. Fear leads to mistakes, mistakes lead to backlash, backlash leads to instability. This chain reaction is something many long-term rulers experience when they begin to lose their grip. Lukashenko's regime is moving into that dangerous stage where every decision must be perfect, but the pressure makes perfect decisions harder to achieve. A single miscalculation could set off consequences that spiral beyond control. The future of Belarus now depends on several unpredictable factors. Will the economy continue to decline? Will officials inside the system stay loyal or begin to shift away? Will the military remain united or become divided? Will Russia decide to increase its control even more? Will the public grow bold enough to demand real change again? Any of these developments could decide the fate of the regime. One interesting aspect of this situation is how quickly things can change when a regime becomes fragile. History shows that political systems often appear stable right before they begin to collapse. The illusion of control can hide deep internal problems, and when those problems surface, the fall can be sudden. Belarus may not be at that point yet, but the signs indicate that it is moving closer. Many people inside Belarus have begun planning for what might come after Lukashenko. They are discussing ideas for the country's future, hoping for a system that is more open, more democratic, and more connected with the world. This does not mean a transition will happen soon, but it shows that the population is thinking beyond the current leadership. When people start thinking beyond a leader, that leader's era begins to weaken. Lukashenko is aware of these dangers, and he has increased surveillance, tightened control, and tried to reinforce loyalty within the system. But pressure cannot be controlled forever. The more force a leader uses to maintain power, the more resentment grows beneath the surface. When resentment builds long enough, it eventually explodes. Many analysts believe the next few months and years will be crucial. Belarus is entering a period where the smallest event could become a turning point. A sudden economic shock, a political dispute, a military disagreement, or a public protest could shift the balance. When a regime stands on thin ice, the question is not whether the ice will crack, but when and how. The world is watching closely. Countries in Europe, Russia, and the region all understand that Belarus is moving into a sensitive era. Any major change could shift regional politics, economic relations, and security dynamics. This is why international observers treat every development with caution. No one knows whether the change will be peaceful or chaotic, controlled or sudden, but inside Belarus, people are focused on their own lives, struggles, and hopes. They want stability, opportunities, and a future where they don't have to fear expressing their opinions. For many, Lukashenko's rule no longer represents those hopes. Instead, it represents a past that is fading. The question now is whether the system will adapt or resist until it breaks. Lukashenko still has supporters, especially among older generations, rural regions, and those who believe his rule prevents chaos. These supporters fear instability more than they dislike the government, but even this base is shrinking as economic conditions worsen. When people begin to suffer economically, political loyalty fades quickly. Another serious challenge is the younger population. Young people in Belarus see the world through technology, communication, and global awareness. They compare their country with others and see that they have fewer freedoms and opportunities. This creates a generational divide where the young feel disconnected from the political system and eager for change. When a regime loses the younger generation, its long-term survival becomes extremely uncertain. One of the reasons the regime lasted so long is because Lukashenko controlled every institution. But controlling institutions requires constant energy, money, and loyalty. As pressure increases, these institutions begin to weaken. Courts become less effective, media becomes more desperate, security forces become more exhausted, and officials become more uncertain. This is what happens when a regime's foundation begins to crumble. The turning point may come from inside the regime, not outside. Many historical transitions begin when officials close to the leader quietly decide that supporting change is safer than supporting the ruler. Whether such a decision will happen in Belarus is unknown, but the conditions that lead to such decisions are now forming. Silence within the system is often a sign of hidden movement. As the situation continues to evolve, one thing is clear: Belarus is not the same country it was a decade ago. The era of unquestioned rule is ending. The era of uncertainty has begun. The direction of the future depends on the choices of leaders, citizens, and regional powers. But one fact remains undeniable: Lukashenko's regime is no longer standing on solid ground. It is standing on thin ice, and the cracks are spreading. In the end, whether change comes slowly or suddenly, peacefully or through confrontation, Belarus is approaching a new chapter. The people are watching, the world is watching, and the regime is struggling to keep balance as the pressure builds from every side. The only question now is what breaks first, the ice beneath the regime or the pressure from above. If you found this analysis helpful, stay tuned for more deep dives into global political developments. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.